A $325 million deal completely shut down. And now everyone, from players to politicians, is asking the same question. What is the WNBA really doing? Because when news broke that the Connecticut Sun was set to be sold to a high-profile ownership group with ties to the Boston Celtics, it looked like a game-changing moment. Bigger market, better facilities, more exposure, a clear step forward. But then the league stepped in and blocked it. Just like that. No celebration, no transition, just a hard stop. Now on the surface, the explanation sounds simple: rules, process, expansion priorities. But the reaction, that's where things get intense, because reports suggest this wasn't just seen as a business decision. Some believe it felt like a rejection of growth, of opportunity, and even of the players themselves. And the backlash has been loud. Even Richard Blumenthal stepped in, calling for an investigation and questioning whether this move crossed into anti-competitive territory. When a situation escalates to that level, you know it's no longer just about basketball. But here's the real twist. While the Sun were being blocked from moving into a stronger position, the league was simultaneously pushing forward with expansion plans elsewhere, most notably in Houston. And that contrast is exactly what's raising eyebrows. Because now people are starting to wonder, is this about fairness or control? Is the league protecting its long-term vision? Or quietly deciding who gets to benefit from the WNBA's rapid growth? And once you start asking those questions, this story stops being about one team and starts becoming something much bigger. It all started with what looked like a perfect deal, the kind that could have instantly changed everything for the Connecticut Sun. A reported $325 million offer was on the table. Not just any offer, but one backed by a high-profile ownership group connected to the Boston Celtics. The plan: move the franchise into the Boston market and transform it into a major player overnight. More exposure, better facilities, bigger crowds. On paper, it checked every box. For players, this wasn't just about relocation, it was about opportunity. A chance to step into a larger spotlight, access top-tier resources, and finally operate like a fully modern professional franchise. Reports suggest many saw it as a long-overdue upgrade from the current situation, which has often been criticized for lacking elite-level infrastructure. And that's what made what happened next so surprising. The league said no. Just like that. The deal didn't move forward. No approval, no compromise, just a firm block from the WNBA's leadership, shutting down what could have been one of the most significant ownership transitions in league history. Now officially, the explanation centers around process. The league maintains that relocation and expansion decisions must follow a structured path, and Boston, despite the interest, had not gone through that process. Simple. But not everyone is buying that explanation. Because from the outside, it doesn't look like a weak offer. It doesn't look like a risky move. It looks like a strong investment being turned away. And that's where the confusion and frustration starts to build. Some believe this wasn't just about rules, but about timing, control, and who gets to enter the league's next phase of growth. And when a deal this big gets blocked, it sends a message. Not just to the Sun, but to every player, investor, and fan watching closely. Because if a move like this can be stopped, then what actually determines which opportunities go through and which ones do? And that question is what really pushed this situation into something much bigger. So why was the deal actually blocked? According to the league, the answer is simple. Rules. The WNBA stated that any new market, like Boston, has to go through the official expansion process. That includes formal bids, approvals, and waiting in line behind other cities that have already been vetted. And right now, cities like Houston, Toronto, and Portland are ahead in that process. On paper, that sounds fair. Structured, organized, controlled. But here, where things start to feel off. Because while the Connecticut Sun deal was being blocked for skipping the line, the league was simultaneously fast-tracking other markets. Expansion teams are being approved, ownership groups are being welcomed in, and new cities are being prioritized. So naturally, people started asking questions. Why is Boston, one of the biggest sports markets in the country, not being accelerated the same way? Why block a $325 million investment that could instantly upgrade a franchise? And more importantly, who decides which cities get priority? The league's official stance is that the process must be respected, that every ownership group has to follow the same path, but some believe that explanation doesn't fully line up with what's actually happening behind the scenes. There's been growing speculation that this isn't just about process, it's about control. Control over timing, control over expansion, and control over how fast the league grows in this new era. Because right now, the WNBA is experiencing a surge in attention, driven in part by stars like Caitlin Clark. And with that surge comes opportunity, big markets, bigger deals, faster growth. But instead of moving quickly, the league appears to be slowing things down, sticking to a long-term plan rather than reacting to immediate opportunities. Some believe that's smart. Others see it as a missed opportunity. And then there's the more controversial perspective, one that's been circulating quietly. That certain ownership groups or markets may be getting preference based on relationships, timing, or long-term league strategy. Now, to be clear, nothing officially confirms that. But when a deal this big gets turned away while others move forward, it creates doubt. Because at that point, it stops looking like a simple process issue and starts looking like selective decision-making. And this is where the story stops being about ownership and starts becoming about the players. Because behind all the official statements and league explanations, there's a growing sense that the people actually on the court were never really part of this decision. Players tied to the Connecticut Sun, especially veterans, have spent years building that franchise, winning games, creating identity, keeping the team relevant even when resources weren't elite. And now, with the league finally exploding in popularity, they're watching a major opportunity slip away. That's where the frustration comes from. Not just the blocked deal, but the feeling of having no control. Take DeWanna, for example. While there's no official statement laying everything out, reports and reactions suggest players in her position see this as more than just a business move. It's being interpreted as a signal that even after years of contribution, their voices still don't carry real weight when it matters most. And that realization hits hard. Because this wasn't just about relocation, it was about leveling up, a chance to move into a stronger market, improve facilities, and compete in an environment that matches the league's current growth. Instead, that path was closed off, without players having a real say in the outcome. Now, to be fair, nothing publicly confirms open conflict inside the locker room. But the tone, it's shifting. There's been speculation that this decision has created quiet tension, not explosive, not dramatic, but noticeable. The kind where players start thinking differently about their future, about their value, about whether the system they're in actually works for them. Because once that trust gets questioned, everything changes. And this situation adds another layer to an already important moment for the league, the upcoming CBA negotiations. Players are already pushing for more influence, more control, more say in how the business side operates. And decisions like this, they don't help. If anything, they reinforce the idea that players are still operating within a system where the biggest moves happen around them, not with them. And if that perception continues to grow, this won't just be frustration. It could turn into something much bigger. And just when it felt like this situation couldn't get any bigger, it did. Because now, it's no longer just players and fans reacting. The political world has stepped in too. When Richard Blumenthal publicly called out the situation, everything changed. He didn't just question the decision, he went further, suggesting that what happened could potentially be anti-competitive and even hinted at possible investigation. That's a completely different level. Because once a US senator is talking about Department of Justice involvement, this stops being a sports story. It becomes a national conversation. Now, to be clear, nothing has been officially confirmed beyond those statements, but the fact that this even reached that point shows how intense the reaction has been. Fans in Connecticut, longtime supporters of the Connecticut Sun, have been vocal, and not just online. There's real frustration about potentially losing a team that's been part of the community for years. And from their perspective, it feels personal. Because this isn't just about relocation, it's about being overlooked, being told that despite years of support, another market is suddenly more valuable. And when a deal that could have kept regional relevance alive gets blocked, it adds fuel to that frustration. But here, where things get even more complicated. The backlash isn't all coming from one side. Some people support the league's decision, arguing that structure and long-term planning matter more than reacting to one big deal. Others believe the league is protecting its expansion roadmap and trying to avoid chaos. So now, the conversation is split. One side sees this as necessary control. The other sees it as overreach. And right in the middle of that debate is the league itself, trying to manage growth, protect its system, and avoid setting a precedent that could open the door to uncontrolled relocations. But the problem is, once public pressure and political attention enter the picture, control becomes harder to maintain. Because now, every move is being watched. Every decision is being questioned. And every explanation is being picked apart. Which means this situation isn't cooling down anytime soon. If anything, it's just getting started. But here, where the situation takes a turn that a lot of people aren't comfortable talking about. Because while the Connecticut Sun were being blocked from moving into Boston, the league was quietly pushing forward with a completely different plan. Houston. The revival of the Houston Comets, a historic franchise with deep roots in the league, suddenly became a major focus. On the surface, it makes sense. Big market, strong basketball history, a chance to reconnect with a legacy brand. But the timing, that's what raised eyebrows. Because instead of allowing a current team to grow into a stronger market like Boston, the league appears to be prioritizing a new or revived market entirely. And that's where speculation starts to build. Some believe this isn't just about expansion, but about influence. There's been talk, again, nothing officially confirmed, that connections to NBA ownership circles may be playing a role here. Houston, after all, is tied to powerful ownership through the Houston Rockets and its leadership. And when those kinds of relationships exist, people naturally start connecting dots. Is this just coincidence? Or is there a deeper alignment between WNBA decisions and NBA interests? That's the question being quietly asked. Because if the league is prioritizing markets tied to established NBA ownership groups, it could suggest a bigger strategy, one focused on long-term partnerships, financial backing, and stability at the ownership level. From a business standpoint, that's understandable. But from a competitive standpoint, that's where it gets tricky. Because now it starts to feel like certain opportunities might depend not just on market potential, but on who's behind the bid. And for players and fans watching this unfold, that creates uncertainty. Because if a strong offer tied to Boston can be blocked, while another path tied to Houston moves forward, it stops feeling like a level playing field. Now again, nothing has been officially confirmed about favoritism or influence. But in situations like this, perception matters. And right now, the perception is clear that this decision might not just be about growth, but about who gets to control it. But here's the layer that makes this situation even more complicated: the timing. Because all of this is happening right as Caitlin Clark is completely changing the trajectory of the league. And that's not an exaggeration. Since Clark entered the WNBA, everything has accelerated: ratings, ticket sales, media coverage, sponsorships. The attention around the league has exploded in a way that few people predicted this quickly. And with that surge comes something the WNBA hasn't had at this level before: urgency, opportunity, momentum. Now, normally, when a league hits a moment like this, the expectation is simple: move fast, expand into major markets, maximize visibility, take advantage of the spotlight while it's at its peak. And that's exactly why the blocked Boston move feels so confusing to some observers. Because Boston represents exactly that kind of opportunity: a massive sports city, a built-in fan base, and immediate relevance. Pair that with the current surge in interest driven by players like Clark, and it looks like a perfect alignment. But instead, the league chose patience, structure, control, and that's where opinions start to split. Some believe this is the right approach, that the WNBA is trying to build something sustainable, not rush into decisions just because of short-term hype. That following a structured expansion plan ensures long-term stability instead of chaotic growth. But others see it differently. There's been speculation that the league might actually be slowing things down on purpose, trying to control how and where this new wave of attention is distributed, not letting one market or one deal dominate too quickly. And if that's true, it changes how this entire situation is viewed. Because now, it's not just about one blocked sale. It's about how the league wants to shape its future in the middle of a massive growth moment. Do they lean into the momentum and expand aggressively? Or do they carefully manage it, even if it means turning away opportunities in the short term? That's the balancing act. And right now, it feels like the WNBA is choosing control over speed. But in a moment this big, that decision could define everything that comes next. But while executives debate strategy and players deal with uncertainty, there's another group taking a direct hit from all of this: the fans. Because for supporters of the Connecticut Sun, this isn't just a business story, it's personal. This is a fan base that's been there through everything, through the quieter years, through limited resources, through a league that didn't always have the spotlight it does now. And despite all that, they showed up, night after night, season after season. They built something real. And now, it feels like it's being taken away. With the team expected to play just one more season in Connecticut before a potential move in 2027, the situation creates what many are calling a lame duck environment. Every game starts to feel different. Every moment carries this underlying tension, like something is ending, even if no one wants to say it out loud. And that changes everything. Because it's not just about wins and losses anymore. It's about uncertainty. Fans are left wondering, what are they actually supporting right now? A team that's staying, or a team that's already halfway out the door? That emotional disconnect is hard to ignore. And it doesn't stop with the fans. It affects the players too. Because now they're competing in an environment where the future isn't stable, where the crowd energy might shift, where the identity of the team feels temporary. And for professional athletes trying to perform at the highest level, that kind of instability can quietly impact everything. Now, to be fair, the league likely sees this as part of a bigger plan: short-term discomfort for long-term growth. But for the people living it in real time, It doesn't feel strategic. It feels abrupt. Some fans have already expressed frustration, feeling like their loyalty is being traded for a new market that hasn't yet proven it will show the same level of support. And that's where the emotional side of this story really hits. Because markets can be replaced, but communities, those are built over time. And once that connection is broken, it's not easy to rebuild. Which is why this part of the story might end up being the most lasting. Not the deal, not the politics, but the feeling that a loyal fan base was left behind in the middle of it all. When you step back and look at everything, the blocked deal, the player frustration, the political pressure, the expansion decisions, it becomes clear. This was never just about selling the Connecticut Sun. This is about control. Because what we're really watching right now is a league trying to balance two powerful forces pulling in opposite directions. On one side, you have rapid growth, new fans, bigger markets, rising valuations, and stars like Caitlin Clark bringing unprecedented attention. On the other side, you have structure, rules, ownership processes, and a system designed to keep everything stable and controlled. And right now, those two forces are colliding. The Boston deal represented speed, opportunity, a chance to capitalize on momentum immediately, but the league chose a different path, one built on patience, long-term planning, and strict control over who enters and when. Some believe that's smart. Others see it as a dangerous risk. Because moments like this don't last forever. And when a league is growing this fast, turning away major opportunities can feel like hitting the brakes at the worst possible time. That's why this decision has sparked so much reaction, not just from fans, but from players and even politicians. Now, to be clear, nothing proves there's favoritism or hidden agendas behind the scenes. But perception matters. And right now, the perception is that the WNBA is carefully choosing its future, rather than letting it evolve naturally. And that creates tension. Because players want more influence, fans want transparency, investors want opportunity, and the league wants control. Those goals don't always align. So the real question moving forward isn't just about where the Sun will play in 2027. It's about what kind of league the WNBA wants to become. One that moves fast and adapts to the moment, or one that builds slowly, even if it means passing on opportunities along the way. Because this decision didn't just affect one franchise. It sent a message. And depending on how things unfold next, that message could either protect the league's future or quietly limit it.